All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 8 on our curriculum and instructional design course. As always, I'm going to go over our agenda. So I'm going to scroll down to week 8. Right here. So on week 8 this week and the following week, we're basically studying chapter 13. And then we've got 2 projects, instructional project number 4 and online discussion assignment, as well as our quiz, which is number 4. We will be taking this next week on week 9. Here it says chapter 11. This should read actual chapter 13. I'll correct this. We're studying chapter 13 on week 8 and on week 9. So prior to this week, week 8, you had instructional project number 3. And this was a research assignment, and I'm still working on your research assignments. I'm still grading them. Half of them are complete. The other half should be done tomorrow. But I already graded your discussion assignment, which is discussion 4, so you can check your grade for that. And the quiz 3 is already completed, and you may check your quiz responses when you click on quiz number 3. So moving on to week 8, as I told you before, we're studying chapter 13, and I want to get started with chapter 13, presentation and the lecture. So here's our topic. It's integrated teaching methods. You may be wondering, why is it called integrated? So far we learned about direct instruction, we learned about indirect teaching methods, and now we're talking about integrated teaching methods. So this type of teaching strategy includes a combination of direct and indirect teaching methods. That's why it's called integrated teaching methods. So what are our objectives? We're going to take a look at different methods such as demonstration method, Socratic method, concept attainment strategy, cooperative learning methods. We're going to take a look at role playing, and also the description, or let's say the difference between simulations and games and their advantages and limitations. We'll take a look at blended learning, individualized instruction, independent study, and mastery learning. So a part of this will also talk about drill and practice. I want to start the presentation with this quote here from Brunner. So it says, today people remember only 10% of what they hear. On the other hand, 20% of what they read, and about 80% of what they see and do. So by now, we all understand visual information is very important, what you see, at the same time what you do. So if you can just change your teaching philosophy around this, you would be, I guess, better off in terms of your teaching skills. So let's take a look at integrated teaching strategies. So teachers typically, our role as a teacher in the classroom is to deliver instruction. When we deliver instruction, we tend to do this on our own, and we try to be, the main source of information in the classroom. But then we should be always encouraging students to do their own learning, which is what we call self-directed learning. So how can we develop self-directed learning? We can start with demonstrations. Then we may use or implement Socratic method. We may use concept attainment, cooperative learning. These are kind of like in between direct teaching and indirect teaching methods. So they're good to start with, because it's not always easy to implement indirect teaching methods such as discovery learning in the classroom. So these tools are kind of like in between, and they're great to start with. Later down in the road, you may use simulations, games, and individualized instruction, which would be more self-directed than even these tools. So if you go down in this list, you're going to see more self-directed teaching methods. So let's talk about demonstration method. So in this method, pretty much individuals stands before the class in a designated area, and typically someone, well, this is typically the teacher again, shows something and tells what is happening or what was happened, and asks students to discuss what has happened. So demonstration is a commonly used method, especially in science classes, I would say, but in other areas as well. So this is basically this technique basically involves showing how something works, or it's about skill development. So in this type of teaching method, students observe the demonstration in silence. Typically, they are sitting in front of this demonstration area and watching the demonstration in silence, not contributing to actual demonstration. If you want to make your demonstration activities much more interesting, or if you want to motivate students, I would say have a student to conduct the demonstration, if it is possible. As a teacher, you tend to do the instruction or demonstrations all the time, but if you allow a student to do the demonstration, this may even be more interesting to your students. And before you start an introduction, there are actual steps here. Let's see. The steps are located here. So before you even start demonstration, if you can introduce the topic with some sort of anticipatory set, for example, showing a video clip or explaining the purpose of this activity, or some sort of cognitive set would be the best. So you start with an introduction to set the stage, and then go slowly so students can follow. That's the first step. You break complex procedures into small steps, and you demonstrate each step separately. Once students understand those separate steps, you repeat the entire demonstration. So another thing here is that all of the students in this demonstration, it is important how to place them in the demonstration. They should be able to see you clearly. So think about from their perspective when you design your demonstration activities. And after this fifth step, you would most likely want to do follow-up with the students to check their understanding. So before you start, always use a cognitive set, introduce the topic to set the stage, and after the demonstration, make sure you will be following up with the students to check their understanding. So you may just show, for example, a movie, a video, a experiment setting. You may show a picture or book. All these part of demonstrations. So demonstrations are not limited to just doing some sort of experiment in front of the classroom. All right, so let's go back to demonstration. And why are we using demonstrations? Because they're useful when there's a danger involved in students using equipment or materials. Especially again in science type of settings, you may want to do this yourself versus allowing students to do the work. So this way students are safe and you know how to handle that delicate situation. It may save time if necessary, if this is important for you. And you may show proper use of equipment, which would be, again, very important, especially in a lab environment. And then with demonstrations, you can show procedures for a certain device or experiment setting step by step. and then you can get the points across that is not easily expressed in words just by showing. As I said in the beginning, the quote, remember the quote, showing, visual, and by doing, people learn much faster and they retain that information much longer. All right, so let's move on to this slide right here. So you would need to carefully plan and practice your demonstration sessions in order these sessions to be successful. Make sure your demonstrations will be doable and you will practicing them before you show or before you make this demonstration in front of the students. It needs to be, or your explanations should be understandable by students, and you need to manage your time efficiently, otherwise demonstrations may go really wrong. Make sure you're going to do time management with your demonstration activities. All right, now we're going to talk about Socratic method. This is a technique used in the classroom, pretty much just like a discussion technique that you use in the classroom. It's a questioning and interaction sequence. So you ask a series of questions to students, and your purpose is to draw information out of students rather than pouring information into the students. So again, using questioning techniques back and forth, you try to draw information out of students and try to get them to a point. That's your goal in Socratic method. So you ask questions and then you lead students into a logical conclusion. This could be used in a whole class environment, small groups, or individuals, but ideally, or when you use this with small group setting, even including one-on-one, sessions, this will be working the best. So in this type of questioning sequence, you typically focus on a single student, and then another student, and then another student. So typically one-on-one would be more effective with Socratic method. Again, you need to have a clear vision, you need to have a purpose on this type of method. You need to have an end point that you want to reach with your students so students can learn from this activity. So how do you do or how do you follow Socratic method? Basically, you begin with a broad, open-ended question that most students can answer. And then you ask a series of questions to narrow the range of responses to focus the students' attention or thinking on a specific topic. And then you make periodic summaries of the discussion items. You summarize the points, and the important points are laid out. And then you ask a concluding question to bring students to the desired endpoint. All right, so in this slide, we're going to see some sample questions for Socratic method. You typically, there are different types of questions, so they're listed here, and this is from your textbook. Questions of clarification, so anything, any questions such as these. What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? Why do you say that? All these are to clarify a question or a topic or any sort of subject that they're learning. And there are questions that probe. They're the ones that fall under assumptions. For example, you can ask a question such as this: what is being assumed here? Why would somebody say that? Is that always the case? So these are great discussion starters with your students, and depending on the responses they give, you continue asking several different questions. Reasoning and evidence. For example, what are your reasons for saying that? On what criteria do you base that argument? Could you explain your reasons? And then there are implications and consequences. You may ask a question such as this: what might be the consequences of behaving like that? Do you think you might be jumping to conclusions? How can we find out this? And there are questions about viewpoints or perspectives. What would be an another way of saying that? How do Judy's ideas different from Mike's? So you compare the viewpoints and perspectives. What is an alternative to this topic or to this question, to this solution? And then you may ask questions about the questions itself. How is the question going to help us? Can you think of any other questions that might be useful? What is the question? So all these are some sample Socratic method questions. So you may be wondering if there's an example dialogue. Actually, it's in your book. So let's switch to the book and take a look at this example dialogue from your book. So it's right here. All right. So in this, again, don't forget, when you have this type of dialogue in the class, typically you're focusing on one student or a very small group of students, and then you're trying to reach to a point, but then you want the students to reach to that point with your questioning. So let's try to take a look at this one. Teacher says, suppose your school is having a science fair and you can get class credit for presenting a project. Someone offers to do the necessary science project for you for a price. You know that wouldn't be right. What do you do? The student says, I would pay them and let them do it for me. Then teacher says, why would you do it if a science judge asked if it was your work? Mike says, I paid for it. I would say it was mine. But wouldn't that be a lie? I did pay for it, so it's mine. All right, but you know it wasn't really your work. Suppose the judge asks you to verify that you did the actual work. Mike says, I have no choice but to say I didn't. Suppose it wasn't the science judge, but rather your science teacher who asked, Mike, did you do all this work? Mike says, I might say, yes, I did it. Okay, why would you say that? Fear of getting no credit. Does that mean it is all right to have someone else to do your work and lie? Then doctors should be able to do it, your classmates, the president, and your parents? Well, then suddenly the student starts thinking, and there's a pause. He says no, he understands what he's doing wrong. Then it is okay for you, but not for others? Are there different rules for you? Another pause. Teacher says, what would you think of yourself? What would you think of yourself now that you've said that you would lie to your teacher out of fear? So what kind of person are you, that kind of person? Then Mike says, well, what with that thought I have given it today, I would feel bad. Before today, I wouldn't have cared. Do you have a different image of yourself now? Yes, I think more of myself today than I would have yesterday, because I know there's a better me and I should do the right thing. So by questioning the student, asking the right questions, the Socratic method, you get Mike to a point where his thinking is actually wrong. The thing that he wants to do in terms of his science fair project, paying someone to do it for himself, this is something wrong, and Mike comes to this conclusion after this discussion method. So basically, as it says here, the Socratic method is a process in which ideas are debated in back and forth discussion until some recognizable clarity, or also called light, is reached. So that is the purpose of Socratic method. You want to reach to an endpoint that you planned ahead of time. So, but then the students get to this point with your help. All right, now let's talk about concept attainment. This is a very easy strategy to use in the classroom. A lot of times this may be used, I would say, with younger audience more than the older audience, but there's no set rule about this. So this is an instruction strategy, uses inquiry process. So the whole idea here is that one of the best ways to learn a concept is by seeing the examples or seeing non-examples. So basically you introduce a concept to the students, you show an example of the concept, and then you show non-examples. So based on this activity, by looking at the examples and non-examples, they get the point. So we'll do an example of this in the coming slides, but let's talk about that more. So here's a procedure. So you find attributes of a group or category, you compare and contrast examples, you discuss and identify the attributes of each of these items, you separate the examples into two groups, and then finally you test the hypotheses by applying to other examples of the concept. So let's do an example here. Let me see if I can add something here. So our concept or our topic will be nouns. We want to learn about nouns, and suppose that you don't have any information about what a noun is. So what I'm going to do as a teacher, I will be telling you, I will have a yes group, and then I will have a no group. All right, and I will be verbally telling you a word. If this word is a noun, we would place this under yes. If it is not a noun, we would place this under a no. So I'm going to give you some examples. And by the way, before I start this activity, I need to be describing what a noun is. So a proper noun is a specific person, a place, or a thing. So again, a specific person, a place, or a thing. So I'm going to give you an example. If this is a noun, tell me yes. If not, tell me no. Houston. Yes, it's definitely a noun, right? So we'll place Houston under yes. All right, so I just showed you a positive or an example of noun here. How about chair? All right, there are yeses and nos. All right, according to the description said a place, a person, a place, or a thing. All right, but according to our textbook, I'm not the expert on this. I'm not an English ELA major here. So chair is categorized under no. All right, so how about Jane, which is a name. Chair is a noun. Okay, someone corrected me. Let's put this under noun. All right. How about Jane? Yes, it's a noun. We need non-examples now. How about is? No, it's not a noun. That is correct. How about heavy? No, it's not a noun, right? All right. How about Honda? No or yes? Yes. Okay, so now you see the difference between the examples and non-examples. So by showing or by telling you these examples, consider that I never gave you the description of a noun. Maybe by looking at the examples, you can figure out what a noun is. Well, again, Ms. Porter has a question. Do you mean proper noun? Well, yes, the proper noun. I think the book's example is on proper noun. So you get the point. You're the content, you're the expert in your content area, but concept attainment works this way. So our concept was known, and then by showing examples and non-examples, we try to teach this concept to our students. All right, let's move on to cooperative learning. All right, cooperative learning is first of all, based on constructivism theory. So it's simply more than putting students in a group. I mean, placing in a group environment or dividing class into several groups and having them work on something doesn't mean that this is cooperative learning. So the cooperative learning is much more structured and generally requires that students work together in heterogeneous groups or mixed ability groups, and they do have a set of tasks to complete. So you need to make sure these groups will be mixed groups, and this will be based on their performance level, could be based on their performance level, the gender, and ethnicity. And then you may actually provide rewards to individual students on their performance and if they accomplish the teamwork. Also, we always want accountability of individual students. If they're working in this group, we will need to make sure everybody in the group is contributing to the group work and productively as much as possible. So you may provide incentives for this. All right. All right, what are types of the cooperative learning? Peer tutoring, student teams achievement division, teams games tournaments, team accelerated instruction, group investigation, jigsaw, and graphic organizers. So we're going to take a look at them quickly. All right, what is peer tutoring? So after the direct instruction happens, let's say the teacher gave this lecture, and then students are paired to complete some structured assignments. This is pretty much for reinforcing what's learned new in the classroom. So students may take turns tutoring and they support each other with their efforts. So I'm sure some of you already uses peer tutoring. It's a great tool to learn from another student because they can sometimes tell things much more efficiently to their peers than their teachers. What is students' team achievement division? So in this type of cooperative learning, students are paired evenly in groups, 3, 4, or 5. So team scores are based on individuals improving their scores. It's a very competitive environment. Rewards given to encourage group cooperation. So there's a competitive environment here, and then students compete, the teams compete with each other. Teams, games, tournaments. These are homogeneous groups of 3 or 4. Again, team members compete against each other. There could be weekly tournaments. There could be several different groups, such as Group 1 and 2. Group 1 could include lower level learners. Group 2 could include medium level learners. And again, another competitive type of setting here. But again, there are tournaments involved. So this is kind of like a continuous type of cooperative learning setting. Not only one-shot deal, but you continue with this all the time for a certain period of time. So that's teams, games, tournaments. There's team accelerated instruction. So this is cooperative learning with individual paced instruction. You've got heterogeneous teams, but each student studies individualized materials. Even though they're part of a team, every team member has a different material to study. And then later teammates or team members check each other's work, and advanced students may tutor within the group, such as peer tutoring. There's group investigation. So in these type of settings, groups goals are defined. This involves both group work and independent study. Not necessarily it's always independent study or group work, so it's kind of like a combination of both. This would be a community project or science experiment. These are some examples. So later you combine all of your results, all of your findings at the end for the group. There's also jigsaw strategy, which is part of cooperative learning. All students learn a great deal of information in a short amount of time. So teachers typically select a topic that has multiple subtopics, for example, the solar system. So each student is assigned to a subtopic, for example, the planet Mars, to study in more depth using textbook or some other materials such as internet. Once their independent research is completed, all these individual pieces are combined together for the team, and pretty much, you then combine all these pieces, and then here's your teamwork completed at the end. All right, so let's move on to graphic organizers. So we use graphic organizers to, graphically organize written and oral information. The purpose for this is to help students to understand or organize information in a more understandable or easy manner. So here are some of the examples, such as storyboards. When you write research, in literature, you may use a lot of graphic organizers. KWL chart is pretty commonly used in education. K stands for know, W stands for want to know, and learned. So these are some of the graphic organizers can be used in the classroom. There are different types of graphic organizers. They're basically sorted. This list sorted is from simple to more complex. You may have sequential, such as timelines, flowcharts, or hierarchy type of graphic organizers. You may have single main concepts, such as continuum, spider maps, and multiple concepts, such as Venn diagram or matrices. All right, so at this point, let's review some of the concepts that we learned. Well, we learned about demonstrations, but here there are two different types of demonstrations: ordinary and inquiry. In ordinary, individual shows and explains something to class. Typically, a teacher would be doing this. In inquiry demonstration, individual shows class something without explanation. Students observe, make inferences, and reach conclusions. So ideally, we should be doing more inquiry demonstration than ordinary demonstration, if possible. So students can observe and they can interpret the observation and reach conclusions, which would be more self-directed. In the Socratic method, you use questioning and interaction. You try to draw information out of students. In concept attainment, students learn concepts and they practice analytical thinking skills by looking at examples and non-examples. In cooperative learning, students work together as a team on assigned tasks, and there are several different types of cooperative learning strategies, as we discussed in the previous slides. All right, so again, as always, technology is our helper in terms of effective instruction. So you may use technology for a lot of self-directed learning, but again, with any type of technology use, we need to make sure students are properly trained on how to use the technology. Also, teachers need to be trained on how to use technology. Otherwise, technology may not be efficient for our purpose. Blended learning is probably a term that you already heard before. This is basically a combination of face-to-face classroom time with online activities. So a lot of schools I know are using Edmodo or similar course management systems for design for education. So if you have a face-to-face classroom, you may have a website where students can submit their work or can learn about your assignments. This would be a good example of blended learning. So this combines the best of internet and face-to-face methods for students. And the purpose is to extend learning beyond the classroom. All right, simulations and games. So simulation is a presentation of an artificial situation or event that represents reality. There are two types of simulations. Human simulations. These are usually conducted in the form of role-playing or sociodramas. And there are person-to-computer simulations. Basically, these are simulation games. So, for us, for example, we have no way of going to space. So I know there are some computer simulation programs where you can feel or see that you are in the space station and you can observe around. So this would be a computer simulation. But if you are using a role-playing or some sociodrama, this would be human simulation. So the purpose of simulations is to encourage students to act out behaviors and express in their own words actions and arguments behind an issue. All right, so let's talk about role-playing. So in role-playing, we act out of roles in recreating historical or future events or some current events. And you use, of course, these are imaginary situations. So let's say there is this, let's say the elections are coming up. Well, it's actually coming up. So you may set, some sort of role-playing environment in your classroom where students will be citizens voting for their favorite, candidates, and you can designate some poll stations in your classroom. They can react or they can act about this election environment in the classroom. So this would be a role playing. So students typically try to become another individual to gain a better understanding of how that person feels, what they do, their motivations, and etc. So this gives students an opportunity to study human behavior, actually. All right, so again, the role-playing helps students consider the motives behind actions and behaviors. The sociodrama is very similar to role-playing. It's a form of role-playing that focuses on the various ways a group could solve a problem. Educational games, don't we love them, right? We love them and students like them too. So the main, I guess, benefit of educational games is that it really motivates students. Some games will be helping students to think critically and will help students to develop their imagination skills. So these are part of the reasons we're using educational games. They have a great place in education, but again, as always, we should be planning these educational games and value or evaluate their educational worth before we even present them to the students. Some of the benefits are here. So they actively involve students in their own learning. They may provide positive and not positive, but immediate feedback. This could be very helpful for students to learn the content and move on. It may provide a lot of practice. You see a lot of motivation and interest in the students when they play educational games. And this may allow teachers to work simultaneously with a wide range of students, and it may promote and reward analytical and critical thinking. There are, of course, some limitations with educational games. It may demand a great deal of imagination on the part of teachers and students. So some students are not good at imagining or, imagining or trying to think about some abstract concepts. It may be difficult for them. Oftentimes, you screen out critical elements. Sometimes some critical elements or important topics are not covered in educational games. They could be very limited in terms of their reach. So the content-wise, you may just be focusing on a certain topic in an educational game, and this may take so much of a student's time, which would be not a valuable experience. So some of the educational games are commercially produced, and they may be expensive, or they may not even be very educational. So when you use educational games all the time in the classroom, you may even lose or degrade your formality of teacher-student relationship, or you may have some classroom management problems or discipline issues arising when educational games are played. All right, let's talk about individualized strategies. So again, here our purpose is engaging students in learning, in their own learning, and these are pretty much plans put together with teacher and the students based on students' interest and their need and their abilities. So we want to allow students to work on the same material at their own pace with individualized strategies. This is the most self-directed type of learning and most idealistic type of strategy. So this allows teachers to vary learning pace, instructional objectives, learning methods, and learning materials. So under certain conditions, for example, research suggests that the master learning approach does lead to higher student achievement. When used as the only method of instruction, this may not have all the benefits that you can think of. I mean, it needs to be used with or along with some traditional methods. You may not just create an individual experience for a student and forget about the student. If it is used in a combination of different techniques, it's going to be the best. Also, another concern with this, if the students are self-motivated and self-directed, they may stay on the task, but otherwise, some individualized activities may not even work for some students. So some of the individualized strategies include individualized instruction, mastery learning, independent study. These are the commonly used individualized strategies. So we can take a look at them quickly. All right, what is mastery learning? First of all, this is a group approach to teaching. Even though you try to achieve individualized learning out of mastery learning, it's still a group approach, a group model to teaching. I'm going to underline this group approach. This is a group approach. Provides a high degree of individualization for students, often at different paces and using different materials. So here are the steps for this. You identify your objectives, you administer pre-assessment, you deliver primary instruction, you then administer formative assessment, provide enrichment and alternatives, and then you evaluate the learning with post-tests or other final evaluation. Let's take a look at these. Before I show you independent, let me show you the traditional model of instruction and the master learning. So in traditional model, you've got your objectives that you want to cover with your students, and then you go ahead and give the instruction, typically direct instruction, lecturing, and then at the end, you use a quiz or some sort of summative evaluation, which would pretty much measure the learning for this activity. But in master learning, though, this is more complicated. You still have the objectives that you want to cover, but before you even talk about your objectives or start teaching about them, you have a pre-assessment. You pre-assess students' knowledge, kind of like a pre-test, quiz, or some verbal check, some sort of assessment before you start on doing your lecture or your primary instruction. And then after the primary instruction, during the instruction, when the instruction is still not completed, you do formative assessment. Formative assessment means an ongoing assessment while the instruction is still not completed. If the instruction is completely done, then you would do a summative evaluation, which would summarize the student's learning. So during the instruction, you do formative assessment, you keep assessing the student's knowledge, and based on what you learn or what the students learn, you modify your instruction. You may enrich your instruction. You may provide alternative instruction methods, and ideally they will work out fine and students will learn better because you assess them using formative methods, and now you can assess their overall learning or the final learning using a summative evaluation such as a final exam. And now you move on to the next objective. So if you use this type of instruction, this would be master model, which is ideally what we need to do. Let's go back to independent study. So you pretty much know this very well. It's an educational activity carried out by an individual with little or no guidance. So as a teacher, you provide this topic to your student and tell the student some rules, some procedures in the beginning, and pretty much provide no guidance or very little guidance throughout this experience, and they independently work on that subject and then bring their results to you. So why are we doing this? This may provide time to work with individual students or small groups. How can this be done? Structure the time for students to engage in interesting, creative tasks of their own choosing. If the students are involved in the subject choice, what they're going to work on, this would be a better approach for independent study. And when the activities are completed, you may provide some other activities. So independent study is a great tool, but should be used in certain situations. There's a question. Formative assessment can also be given at the end of instruction, right? Well, that is correct, but when the formative assessment is given at the end of instruction, and if the purpose is to modify the instruction, to enrich the instruction, that is correct. You give the formative assessment during the instruction or right after the instruction. But when you complete the whole unit, everything, all the instruction, all the activities are completed, at the end of this whole instruction or the unit, let's say unit, you would do a summative assessment. All right, I hope this answers your question. All right, let's talk about drill and practice. All right, there's a question here. In what grade is independent study most useful? I would say starting from middle school, it would be appropriate to use. And in high school, it would be much more effective, I would say. Because it requires a lot of self-learning, independent skills, motivation. So high school would be the best, high school levels would be the best levels for this type of activity. Drill and practice. So drill is concerned with the fixation of specific associations for automatic recall. On the other hand, practice is concerned with improvement. So with drill, typically you want to know you want to remember some sort of information automatically without even thinking about it. When you do the drill, practice comes next. With the practice, though, you try to improve the performance. So why do we do this? We try to achieve automatic accuracy and speed of performance. And how can we do this? Individualized problem-solving processes are the key to drill and practice. All right, what are some of the guidelines for drill and practice? So you need to make sure you're going to plan your drills and practice activities carefully, and you need to communicate their importance to students. Make sure assigned drills and practices are appropriate and not too difficult. You need to give clear expectations and make sure students are accountable, and when applicable, all seat work should be checked. Okay, let's take a look at this review table here. So if we are using computer integration, this is what we're doing. We are basically using computers or any sort of technology devices to enhance curriculum learning. If you're using blended learning, this involves combining face-to-face classroom time or instruction along with online activities. Sometimes this is called hybrid learning as well. Simulations and games. These are the models of artificial situations and events designed to provide no-risk experiences for students. In individualized instruction, the instruction is tailored to interests, needs, and abilities of students. Ideally, this is what we need to do, but it is the most difficult approach that we can use. Independent study, the activities are carried out with little or no guidance by the students pretty much. In mastery learning, this is diagnostic corrective enrichment model where students work on objectives until mastery is achieved. And again, you use pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment at the end. The idea here is that you always enrich your methods or your instruction through mastery learning. In drill and practice, you try to develop automatic skills, or you want to improve performance. The automatic recall would be drill, and improving performance would be practice. All right, so I think I'm done here with my presentation. So what we want to do at this time, we want to take a look at some practice questions. All right, so for this, I do have a quiz on Kahoot. So let's go ahead and play this game. All right, so I'm going to show you the Kahoot pin number. At this time, please go to kahoot.it. And then you will need to enter this game pin, which is 358144. All right, let's see who's going to be the winner this week. I'm going to wait until we reach at least 30 players. All right, we need more participation, please. Go ahead and log into kahoot.it. Where are the rest of the people? We've got 69 attendees. All right, thank you. Thank you, Donald. I know you're in. All right, some of you are using nicknames. Okay, no problem. If you're if you're joining the webinar using your phone, you're okay. All right, so let's see. Shall we start? All right, we've got 25 people. Let's get started. All right, here's our first question. Since demonstrations are motivational to students, a cognitive set isn't really necessary. Since demonstrations are motivational to students, a cognitive set isn't really necessary. Is that true or false? All right, the correct answer was false. Even though you're doing demonstration, it could be motivational for students. They could be very interested in demonstrations, but still some sort of cognitive set, some sort of introduction in the beginning would be ideal for your demonstration. So they are actually necessary. Okay. All right, very good. So HK so far is leading. Let's go to next one. Question 2. A debriefing session should follow any role-playing episode. A debriefing session should follow any role-playing episode. Is it true or false? Okay, the correct answer was true, and most of you said true. After the role-playing, we want to include some sort of debriefing activity. This would make our role-playing session much more effective. All right, we'll go next. All right, still HK is leading here. Very good. We'll continue with the third question. Independent projects should be limited to the best students, such as independent study projects. Independent projects should be limited to the best students. Is that true or false? It is false. Again, most of you got this correct. I mean, that is definitely wrong. I mean, there's no reason we should be limiting this to best students. We need to give chance to all of the students. All right, HK is still leading, followed by Mehmet Han. All right, so I think I have 2 more questions. Let's see, next. Unlike traditional model, mastery learning takes a total individualization approach to learning. Unlike traditional model, mastery learning takes a total individualization approach to learning. Is that true or false? All right, so most of you said true for this, but again, master learning is actually using a group approach, not individual approach. So this was a tricky question. If you said false, you were right. All right, so let's continue. Now we have a different leader. Sehmech is the leader, and I've got Albert next. All right, our last question. I'm sorry, this is the fifth question. For practice to be most effective, it should be individualized, it should be drilled, it should be conducted under great pressure, it should be group. All right, so variety of answers here. Only 6 people said individualized. We do want practice to be individualized. So the correct answer was individualized. All right, we have a new leader, Donald, and then Sehmich is following. This is our last question. The Socratic technique works best in what situation? Whole class session, one-to-one relationships, combined class session, or committee projects? All right, the correct answer was one-to-one relationships. Most of you said one-to-one relationships. Good job. All right, so let's take a look at the leader here is Sehmet. Congratulations. Can you reveal yourself, Sehmet? All right, this is a nickname for you, right? Oh, Mr. Oska is the second. Okay, Eyüp Sehmet is our leader for this week. Congratulations. All right, so very good. So at this time, I want to take a break for about, let's say like 7:15. We want to come back at 7:15. We're taking a break. All right? All right, so we're back. 7:15 already. So what we're going to do next, we're going to take a look at our projects for this week and next week. So I'm going to switch to our course website here. And I do want to start with online discussion number 5. All right, in online discussion number 5, as always, you've got 2 options here, A or B. In A, you talk about integrated teaching methods. When is it appropriate to use integrated teaching methods? Consider your instructional intent as well as the students themselves. The second part involves with cooperative learning. Could you use or are you using cooperative learning at the grade level you expect to teach or you're already teaching? What form would work best? Remember, I gave you several examples of cooperative learning. And how would you accommodate diversity in your groups? So this would be option A. In option B, we talk about educational games. Suppose a parent criticized your use of games in the classroom. So prepare a response titled, "Why our school uses games." This would be for question 1. For question 2, individualized strategies. If individualized strategies are so important and beneficial, why are they not implemented by all teachers? right? They're rarely used or their use is very limited. Can you give us reasons and justify them? So these are our discussion questions. Again, for master's level students, these online discussions are optional, but however, they need to complete total 3 online discussions throughout the semester. For undergrad students, all online discussions are necessary to be done. All right, question about this online discussion 5. The prompts, any questions about these? You're welcome. All right, I think the questions are pretty straightforward. It's about this chapter right here. So let's talk about our instructional project. All right, this is an observation assignment. It's called instructional project number 4. I'll make this a little larger. All right, so in this assignment, you are to observe a teacher. You could be a teacher already practicing, already in the classroom teaching, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be learning from others. Or there are great teachers out there that we can always, copy and paste from. And if there is one place, I wrote this here, if there is one place copying and pasting is allowed and is okay, it's teaching. I mean, as teachers, we want to copy and paste from other teachers, because, as a teacher, our goal is to do our best and try to convey our knowledge, our content knowledge, to the students in the best form, in a form that they can understand. So we need to learn about different teaching techniques. We need to learn about different procedures used by different teachers so we can maybe benefit from them. So for that reason, if you are already a teacher, or if you are going to be a teacher, in any case, you can observe other teachers. So for teacher candidates, this is an excellent opportunity to observe a real classroom environment. For novice teachers, for new teachers, or even for experienced teachers, it's always good practice to observe other teachers. And when you observe the teachers, they don't have to be more experienced than you. I mean, it could be, as a, let's say you're teacher for 5 years. You've been working in schools, or, 6, 7 years. You're very experienced, or 10 years. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you shouldn't be observing a first-year teacher or maybe second-year teacher. So it doesn't really matter. But if you want to observe a master teacher or more experienced teacher, you're more than welcome. I'm not really limiting you on your teacher choice. As long as you are observing a real classroom teacher working in a school environment, again, in a school environment, this would be acceptable. Now, in this experience, we want to reflect on our teaching skills. So what are some of the requirements? So I do want you to observe a teacher in public, private, or a charter school. You don't have to observe certified teachers. They don't have to be certified teachers, but if they are, it's obviously preferred. You may observe any grade level, including kindergarten, and subject. All subjects are acceptable. I would say including, supplementary courses such as art, music, PE, and any other supplementary courses are also acceptable, as long as, there's teaching going on. So observe a classroom or a class period at least for 45 minutes. In some cases, if the school is using 40 minutes periods, it would also be acceptable, but typically your periods will be for 45 minutes. Observed teacher may or may not be more experienced than you. This is acceptable. One thing you will need to do, of course, get permission from the school or from the teacher. Sometimes if you know a teacher friend, or if you know someone working in a school, just ask them personally if you can visit their classroom. I mean, you don't have to be very formal and ask for their, ask for or try to get permission from the principal. I mean, use your connections and try to reach out to a teacher, tell them about this assignment that you're working on, and explain the purpose. This should be done ahead of time, so the teacher knows what to expect. There's a good question here. Nimet says, can we observe another professor at our school? No, I thought about that, but the answer will be no. I do want you to see K through 12 environment rather than a college environment, because dynamics are much different. All right. So for undergrad students, let me get to you at the end of this description. So you want to follow school procedures when arrived at school for observation. If you need to sign in, if you need to provide your ID, etc., whatever the rules of the school, you need to follow them. Respect the teacher when in the classroom, respect his or her rules in the classroom, and ask where it would be appropriate for you to sit down and observe. During the observations, take notes. Tell the teacher that you would be happy to share your notes or observation forms once it's completed. So I'm going to provide you two forms, Form 1 and Form 2. Using these two forms, make your observations and fill out the forms. You're sending both forms to Moodle. All right, so let's take a look at the blank forms. This is Form 1. All right, basically you want to type the observation date, the observation time, the name of the teacher that you observed, the subject and grade level, the school that you observed at, and observer, which would be you. So here are the questions. What were the learning objectives, outcomes of the lesson? Well, sometimes teachers would put this information on the whiteboard or somewhere in the classroom. So if you can identify that information, write it here. If you know the TEKS number, for example, write it down. If you do not know the TEKS number, if it is not available, if you didn't have time to ask this to the teacher, gather this information yourself. How did the teacher begin and end the lesson? So did the teacher use certain procedures in the beginning, and how did the teacher end or close the lesson, right? Now you want to take a look at what you learned so far from this classroom. You want to take a look at the teacher's practices critically and analyze what they do in the classroom. So what did the teacher use for teaching materials or instructional aids and equipment? Did the teacher use just a textbook or some other supplementary material? Or did the teacher use some technology or some device in the classroom? You want to take a look at, you want to look for that in this question and explain how that device, how that material is being used. I'll take your questions in a minute, okay? Number 4, which instructional methods and strategies did the teacher use? Did the teacher use direct teaching methods, mostly lecturing, inquiry learning, discovery learning, discussions, games or simulations, demonstrations, cooperative learning, technology integration, Socratic questioning, etc.? What you can identify, again, from that session, write it down here. How did the teacher assess learning? Did the teacher use an informal assessment, which would be, for example, verbally checking the student's understanding, but not recording those responses, and it's not for grading? This would be informal. A formal assessment, this would be a quiz or essay, which will be graded. Formative assessment at the end of the lesson, right? I'm sorry, during the lesson, during the instruction. Summative assessment, most likely at the end of the lesson or when you close the unit. Oral check, verbal check, open-ended questions, quizzes, feedback, etc. Well, we haven't talked about assessment in detail, but if you want to learn more about assessment, refer to chapter 8 in our book. Number 6, what can you say about the teacher's philosophy or beliefs and style? Do you see the teachers traditional, progressive, behaviorist, student-centered, or teacher-centered? Can you identify any type of style or beliefs of the teacher? How does the teacher manage classroom? This is about classroom management. Can you identify any classroom management techniques used? So talk about that under 7. Number 8, observe in the classroom setting and determine types of behavior students play when off task. When the students are off task, what kind of behavior do they display? What do they do when they are not paying attention? How does the teacher redirect them or get them back on task? Number 9, how does the teacher communicate with students? Verbal, vocal, metaverbal, nonverbal communication, such as body language, use of space, motion, and time. Who were the students in class? What are their demographics? What did you notice about them? Their background, their attitude, their motivation, their participation, etc. What did you see that is effective in engaging students? What do you see that is ineffective in keeping students engaged? And the last 2 questions here, what are the 2 instructional strategies? Again, when we say instructional, this is about teaching methods. This is how we deliver information, right, as a teacher. What 2 instructional strategies would you like to use, or you are planning to use, applying in your classroom that you learned from that teacher specifically? What are 2 important classroom management strategies that you observed and would like to use or apply in your classroom? I'm not limiting you in terms of the length of the answers here. I mean, I don't want to see just single sentences or very short sentences either, but there's no set limit in terms of word limitation, but try to make it a complete paragraph, at least 4 or 5 sentences, explain all these items based on your observation. So this is your main form in terms of your observation. All right, and then I want to show you the second form. All right, this one is kind of like you check some items here. So same way you fill out the first part, and then you take a look at the student behavior. Were they on task, off task, engaged? So you can explain the situation here under explain. You want to observe teacher strategies. Did the teacher use modeling, listening, modifying, problem solving, lecture, monitoring groups, or maybe something else? Explain it here, please. All right, and then teaching materials being used. What kind of materials being used? Just check it here. Type of student grouping. Was it a small group environment, whole group, pairs, individuals? And type of student activities in the classroom, management and discipline issues, explain. And this is the section where you overall comment and reflect about your experience. So you need at least a paragraph of information here. So I was able to include some samples for you here in this assignment. So let's take a look at sample 1. All right, so this particular observation was in a middle school, 7th grade. And here are sample answers. I'm not going to read them to you. You can take a look at them in detail, but this is how you can fill out this form. All right, and then there's another sample. This is another sample for form 1. And there's another sample for form 1. So there are 3 samples for form 1. For form 2, let's take a look at this one. Here's another sample, same observation. So this is how you fill out the form and explain what you observed here actually. So if you scroll down, you're gonna see overall comment and reflection. All right, so I need something similar from you for this assignment. Now, with undergrad students, we're meeting tomorrow in the class and we're gonna go over this assignment, and I'm arranging your observation times and schools. So I am already in touch with several principals, and I will be making sure that you will be observing teachers in high school and elementary school setting. So we'll talk about this in detail. But for my graduate students, again, most of them are already working in school setting, so they have access to different teachers, or they're teachers themselves. They can ask a colleague or teacher working in their school. So I assume that they will be able to find a teacher to observe. If you're not able to find a teacher to observe, let me know in the email, using your email, and I may be able to help you out finding a teacher to observe. All right, but I do want you to use your resources first, and if you have no one to observe for any reason, let me know and we'll work out a solution for you. Now, let me take questions here. All right, can it be a community center nonprofit organization to observe a teacher? Well, ideally, I do really want not even a nonprofit organization, community center. I do want a real K-12 environment. Unless you're unable to find a teacher like that, let me know, and I may make an exception. But I do really want you to see actual school environment versus a center or nonprofit organization. Another question: can you observe a nonprofit? It's the same question. Can you observe a teacher that works at the same time? Let me see. I'm sorry. Can you observe a teacher that works at the same school as me? Definitely, that's fine. You can observe a teacher working in the same school. That's no problem. Another question. Independent homeschool teachers or weekend school teachers. If it is, well, again, Ms. Söylemez, homeschooling maybe, but I mean, the experience that you should be getting here is basically in a real school setting. I would say in a real school setting. So if you're going to have a trouble finding, a school like that, let me know. But ideally, I do want you to go to a real classroom, real school, and observe the environment there, because it's going to be much more valuable. Can we observe special education teachers as long as they are doing instruction? That's the key point. If they are instructing, if they are teaching, if they are providing content, if they are using some teaching strategies, it doesn't matter how many students are in the classroom. I mean, you can have a small group of students, 4 or 5, but ideally, a typical classroom like 20 students, 25 students would be the ideal environment. But if you don't have access to that, I may be able to accept that. You can definitely observe special education teachers, but the one condition is that they need to be instructing. Can we go to All right. Fatima has a question. Can we go to advancement next to NAU? I'm working on that. I'll let you know tomorrow. All right. Any other question about this assignment? Can I observe college counselors? Well, again, if the college counselor is providing instruction, let's say they have a presentation, they're doing direct instruction, that is fine. But if they're not instructing, if they're not managing a classroom, I would say no. All right. Any other questions? You're welcome. All right. Thank you. So I do want to end the webinar here, but I'm going to stay in the line for additional questions. Oh, by the way, can we observe, there's a question, can we observe a teacher from this group? Yes. And now you kind of know each other because you're classmates. If you're not a working teacher, you may ask a classmate to see if they can arrange an observation session for you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Again, I'm on the line for additional questions. You too. Thank you.